Last Christmas, my wife Olivia and I went to her company's annual holiday party. She works at a mid-sized marketing firm, and they always go all out. I'm talking private venue, open bar, the whole 9 yards. Olivia was super excited about it for weeks, texting her friends about their outfits and buying this sleek red dress that I have to admit made her look stunning. But there was something else I noticed too, a glimmer in her eyes like she was more excited than usual. I figured she just wanted a night out, a break from the routine, and honestly, so did I. That night, the place looked incredible. The lights were dimmed just right, and the holiday decorations made everything seem like a scene out of some romantic comedy movie. We mingled with her coworkers and did the small talk rounds. I didn't know most of them personally, but one guy kept catching my eye, Ethan. This tall, overly friendly dude from her department. They laughed together a little too easily, and there was something about the way she leaned in when he talked that made my stomach turn. I pushed it down. There's no point in being that guy, right? The paranoid, insecure husband. She's outgoing. She laughs with everyone. But when she introduced us, she seemed nervous, almost jittery. Ethan shook my hand like we were old pals and made some dumb joke about Olivia being the life of the office. I smiled, but there was an itch in the back of my head that wouldn't go away. Things didn't start unraveling until later in the evening. Olivia disappeared for a while, claiming she had to go grab some water or something. 15 minutes later, she still wasn't back. I looked around the room, scanning the crowd for her red dress, but she was nowhere in sight. I decided to head toward the restroom area, hoping to run into her on the way. That's when I saw it, a narrow hallway leading to a side exit, just slightly open. From that angle, I caught a glimpse of Olivia standing too close to Ethan, who was leaning against the wall way too comfortable in her personal space. They weren't doing anything outright, but the way they were looking at each other, it was like I was seeing two strangers, people with an unspoken connection that didn't belong to me. I forced myself to stay calm. I didn't want to make a scene or accuse her without knowing the full story. So, I turned around and tried to rejoin the party, but my mind wouldn't let me. I grabbed a drink, then another, but no amount of whiskey could burn away that knot in my chest. Olivia returned eventually, acting like nothing happened. She pulled me onto the dance floor, smiling, laughing. It was like she was trying too hard to prove everything was normal, and I was playing along like an idiot. But that knot in my chest had turned into a wildfire in my mind. Hours passed, and people started to leave. Olivia went to the restroom again, and that's when I heard the whispers from a couple of her colleagues who didn't realize I was nearby. They were gossiping about how Ethan and Olivia were so brave for slipping away earlier. One of them laughed, calling it their little secret. I felt the blood drain from my face. My heart raced, and I felt like I was watching everything through a warped lens. I waited until the party was dying down, making sure I didn't do anything stupid in front of her colleagues. We left in silence, her slightly tipsy and happy, and me holding it all inside until we got home. Once inside, I told her we needed to talk. Olivia's demeanor changed instantly. She dropped her purse and crossed her arms like she already knew what was coming. "Is there something you want to tell me?" I asked, my voice shaking but trying to stay steady. "What's that supposed to mean?" she shot back, suddenly defensive. Her eyes narrowed, and she gave a little laugh like I was overreacting. "Chad," I said flatly. "What's going on with Chad?" Olivia rolled her eyes like she was annoyed, like I was the problem. She claimed they were just friends, said I was being ridiculous, that it was all in my head. She got angry, started turning it on me, asking why I was spying on her. She acted like I was the one betraying her. I didn't know what was real anymore. If I was imagining things, or if she was just a damn good liar. But then she made a mistake. She slipped up, calling the hallway incident nothing before I even mentioned it. And that was it. The last thread of trust snapped. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "If you lie to me one more time, this marriage is over." She didn't flinch, just stared right back at me with this cold look, daring me to make my move. I knew in that moment, things weren't just broken, they were shattered. That night after the party, I barely slept. Olivia had stormed off to the guest room, slamming the door behind her, and I lay awake with a million thoughts racing through my head. Everything felt surreal, like I'd been thrown into a movie plot I never signed up for. I kept replaying the night, Every look, every whisper, every time her eyes flickered to Ethan like they shared some secret only they were in on. I spent the next morning in a fog, my stomach in knots. Olivia avoided me like the plague, huffing in and out of rooms without a word. She had a hangover and kept making this huge show of not feeling well, like it was a shield she could hide behind. I couldn't sit with it any longer. I had to know the truth, even if it meant burning everything to the ground. By mid-morning, she went to the grocery store, and I saw it as my chance. This wasn't who I wanted to be, snooping, digging around. But at that point, my dignity was the least of my concerns. I needed answers. Olivia's laptop was on the kitchen counter, her phone still linked up to it for notifications. There was one message thread I hadn't seen before, an archive chat on some app we never used. It was buried deep, and finding it felt like discovering a hidden passage in a house you thought you knew every inch of. I opened it, and there it was, a chain of messages with Ethan that was anything but innocent. It started with casual exchanges and slowly escalated, becoming more flirty, then undeniable. My throat tightened as I read through inside jokes, plans to meet up, and talks of getting away with it. But what got me wasn't the messages themselves. It was how she talked to him. It was like reading someone else's words, someone full of life and excitement, the same person she used to be with me before things got different. Seeing it laid out like that, her secrets, her words, it made the whole thing hit harder. My mind went blank with a quiet rage that only comes from betrayal that deep. I didn't want to believe it, but the proof was right in front of me, laughing in my face. The final nail was a set of photos they exchanged, pictures of them at work, in his car, even one at our own damn house while I was away on a business trip. Seeing that photo of them in our kitchen, where she and I had shared so many moments, made something snap in me. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew that if I did it now, I might say something I'd regret forever. So, I spent the rest of the day quietly planning while she stayed oblivious. I didn't just want to confront her. I wanted to strip away the lies she had been hiding behind and make her face what she did. By the time Olivia came home, I was ready. She came in, unloading groceries and humming to herself like she hadn't destroyed everything. I waited until she turned around to grab something, and I calmly said, "We need to talk." She froze, her back to me before turning with this annoyed expression, like I was being such an inconvenience. "About what, Eric?" Her voice had this edge to it, as if she was daring me to bring it up again. "About you and Ethan," I replied, forcing myself to stay calm. "About these." I held up her laptop, the open messages staring back at her. Her face went pale in an instant, and her mouth opened like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. "I don't know what you think you saw," she started, her voice shaking, trying to regain her composure. "Don't," I cut her off. "Don't insult me by pretending anymore. I saw the messages, Olivia. I saw everything." I was speaking through gritted teeth, my hands shaking with the effort of holding back the fury bubbling inside. Olivia took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing. She switched gears fast. "So what, Eric? You went through my stuff. Now who's the bad guy?" Her voice was sharp, deflecting the blame back at me. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out her next move. "I didn't want to go through your things," I said, "but what choice did you leave me?" I was on the edge of breaking, and she just stood there, more focused on her own defense than what she had done. "You're acting like you caught me murdering someone," she yelled, trying to turn this into a joke. But the more she talked, the more cracks showed in her armor. I saw the panic rising in her eyes, even as she tried to laugh it off. It wasn't fear of losing me. It was fear of losing control. That's when I made the decision to confront this head-on. "Just tell me the truth for once," I demanded, my voice breaking despite my effort to stay composed. "Was it just Ethan? Or are there more?" Olivia paused, her eyes darting around as if looking for an escape. Then, almost in resignation, she dropped her gaze and muttered, "You really want the truth? Fine. Ethan wasn't the only one." Her voice was low, defiant, like she was daring me to react. My heart dropped. She wasn't even denying it, not anymore. It was like something inside her snapped too. She wasn't the woman I knew, and in that moment, I wasn't the husband I thought I was. Everything felt like it was collapsing, the weight of her words pulling me down. But I didn't lash out, not yet. I just turned and walked out of the room, her words echoing in my mind, her face etched into my memory with that defiant, bitter expression. As the door closed behind me, I could hear her quietly crying, but I didn't feel sympathy anymore, only anger. Anger at her for betraying me and anger at myself for ever letting it get this far. After walking out of that room, I went straight to the garage. The walls felt like they were closing in on me, and I needed air, needed to think. My mind was a blur, her confession, the months of lies, the humiliating reality of how easily she deceived me. It was all crashing down at once, and for a moment, I thought I might collapse under it. I stood there in the cold garage, gripping the workbench until my knuckles turned white. Olivia stayed inside, and I could hear her faintly crying, but it was different now, the kind of cry that was more about her getting caught than her being sorry. I used to know her cries, what every tone meant. Now I couldn't recognize anything about her. It's hard to explain how quiet it felt out there, like the whole world had gone silent to let me process the betrayal. I wasn't thinking straight, just replaying everything over and over like a broken record. All those little moments of doubt that I pushed away, the times she made me feel crazy for even asking about him, and all the while she was out there laughing behind my back. I started planning, not an outburst, not a fight. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. I knew she'd expect to blow up, some dramatic scene she could point to later as a reason for why everything fell apart. But if there's one thing Olivia never really understood about me, it's that when I'm hurt, I don't explode. I calculate. And now, all I could think about was how to end this on my terms. I decided to wait. The Christmas holidays were coming up in a week, and we had this big family dinner planned at my brother's place. Everyone would be there, my parents, our friends, even a few of Olivia's coworkers that were close to her. The thought of a perfect holiday, seen with everyone laughing and smiling while she sat there pretending nothing was wrong, made my blood boil. If she wanted to keep pretending, then I'd give her one hell of a show. I spent the next few days acting like everything was fine. It was brutal at first, pretending to laugh at her jokes, playing the part of a loving husband. I didn't want her to know I was onto her plan. But slowly, as the days passed, I felt something shifting inside me. The more I kept up the act, the more numb I became to the pain. It was almost like I was turning off the part of me that cared about her, replacing it with something colder, sharper. Olivia, for her part, seemed to buy it. She still avoided talking about the argument or anything that happened that night, and I didn't push it. I let her think she was in control, that maybe her little confession hadn't shaken me as much as it did. But the reality was, I was counting down the days to Christmas Eve, waiting for the right moment to drop everything. The day of the party arrived, and I felt like a man walking to his own execution. But with a twisted kind of satisfaction, I could see Olivia going through her routine, getting ready for the night with a casual ease that almost made me laugh. She didn't have a clue what was coming. I helped her zip up that same red dress, the one she wore at her company's party, and I couldn't help but think of how things had changed since that night. She looked back at me, smiling, and I forced a smile in return. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice soft and sweet, as if she were still the same woman I married. "Yeah," I replied, fighting back the urge to confront her right there. "Let's get this over with." We arrived at my brother's house, where the party was already in full swing. Everyone was cheerful, drinks flowing, Christmas music playing in the background. I could see Olivia's friends from work mingling in the crowd, some of them looking a little too pleased to see her. Maybe they knew, or maybe they didn't care. Either way, I was past the point of trying to figure out everyone's role in this mess. As the night went on, I stayed close to Olivia, watching her like a hawk while keeping my smile in place. I made small talk, laughed at jokes, and poured drinks like I was enjoying myself. But underneath, I was stewing, waiting for the right moment to make my move. At one point, Ethan walked in, of course. He was invited. He greeted people like he owned the place, laughing and throwing his arm around everyone's shoulders. I saw the way his eyes scanned the room until they landed on Olivia. He didn't come over right away, but there was this silent acknowledgement between them, a fleeting glance that spoke volumes to me. They thought they were in the clear. I could feel my pulse racing, my jaw tightening. I decided I'd had enough. I waited until we were all gathered around the dining table, my parents making toasts and everyone chattering away. Olivia sat beside me, smiling and sipping her wine, completely unaware of what was about to go down. Ethan was a few seats away, laughing with one of Olivia's coworkers. The moment came when everyone quieted down, my brother raising his glass to make a final toast for the evening. It was almost like a movie scene, the perfect setup. As he finished, I stood up, lifting my own glass. I just want to say a few words, I began, clearing my throat. Everyone turned to me, and I could see Olivia's eyes widen a little in surprise. I never make toasts. She knew that. I'm really grateful to have you all here tonight, I continued, trying to keep my voice steady. Family, friends, everyone who's been there for us, and those who haven't. I saw Olivia's face tighten, a faint twitch in her jaw. She could sense something coming, but it was too late to stop me. And I especially want to thank my wife, I said, turning to look at her, for showing me what's really important in life, and for reminding me that trust is, well, it's a lot more fragile than we think. Olivia's smile faded, and I saw the color drain from her face. Olivia's face tightened, and I could see her panic as I turned to Ethan, who sat rigid, glass halfway to his lips. And I especially want to thank my wife, I said, locking eyes with Olivia, for reminding me that trust is a lot more fragile than we think. Her smile faded, and the color drained from her face. A stunned silence fell over the room. Olivia's hand shook, and Ethan's eyes darted around, both momentarily speechless. "What's going on, Eric?" my brother asked, confusion in his voice. "Just airing some grievances," I replied, turning back to Olivia. Her eyes were glassy, lips trembling, desperately seeking an excuse that no longer existed. "Jessica," I said softly, "I really want to understand what happened between you and Ethan." She started to ramble, trying to justify everything. Chad was just an escape, okay? I never meant for it to go this far. I repeated her words. So lying to me, sneaking around, humiliating me, didn't mean anything? Her tears didn't move me. "You love me, Eric," she whispered. "I never stopped loving you." Her words almost reached me, but I remembered the messages, the photos, the glances between her and Ethan. Suddenly, her declarations felt empty. Love isn't just a feeling, it's a commitment, and you broke that over and over. She sobbed harder, pleading, "I can't believe you're giving up on us." "I didn't give up," I replied flatly. "You did." After a long pause, I hung up. The weight that had crushed me began to lift. I felt I could finally breathe. I called my lawyer to finalize the paperwork and planned to move back into the house temporarily to sort through my things. One night, I returned to the house when she wouldn't be there. I felt foreign as I walked through each room, finding Olivia's wedding ring on the nightstand. I picked it up, feeling a wave of sadness, but remembered the lies and betrayal. I placed the ring back down, feeling a strange sense of closure. This was the end of the life I thought I knew, but maybe the beginning of something real and honest. Moving back and felt like stepping into a time capsule filled with tainted memories. I expected relief in my own space again, but the silence was suffocating. Moving back into the house felt like stepping into a time capsule of a life that wasn't mine anymore. Every room echoed with conversations and laughter that now felt tainted. I expected relief in my own space, but the silence was suffocating. I called my lawyer to finalize the divorce paperwork and started making plans to sort through my belongings. It felt like dismantling a life brick by brick, but I couldn't stay in limbo forever. One night, I returned to the house while Olivia stayed with her mom, supposedly reflecting on her mistakes. As I stepped inside, everything felt foreign, like I was intruding on someone else's life. I walked through each room, searching for good memories but finding only hollow ghosts. In our bedroom, I spotted Olivia's wedding ring on the nightstand. I picked it up, feeling a wave of sadness for the life we had planned. But then I remembered the lies and betrayal. I placed the ring back down, feeling a strange sense of closure. This was the end of what I thought I knew, but maybe it was the beginning of something real and honest. The days that followed felt like stepping out of a fog into stark reality. I crashed at Dan's place, where he and his wife, Kelly, offered me space without probing too much. They provided a routine untouched by the wreckage Olivia and I created. But inside, I was anything but calm. I replayed Olivia's words, her excuses and pleas for forgiveness, feeling sick that she believed it was just a mistake. A few days later, I received a call from Olivia's mom, Karen. She expressed concern, trying to understand what happened. I didn't want to explain our mess to her. This was between me and Olivia. There are things Olivia did that can't just be forgiven, I said, trying to remain respectful. Karen sighed, realizing I wasn't going to give details. Just think about giving her another chance. People make mistakes. Not like this, I replied, then hung up. It wasn't the last call. Olivia's friends began reaching out, some expressing sympathy and others trying to play middleman. One friend, Sarah, insisted it was all a misunderstanding, downplaying the betrayal as if it were a minor bump in our marriage. I wanted to scream at them, but I knew it would only give Olivia more ammunition to paint herself as the victim. As weeks passed, I spoke to a lawyer about the divorce logistics, knowing it would become more concrete. Meanwhile, Olivia sent long emails filled with apologies and justifications for her actions, insisting that her betrayal was a moment of weakness. But I knew it was a choice she made repeatedly. One day, her email struck me with infuriating excuses. She suggested I was partly responsible for her betrayal, blaming me for being distant. The final straw was her last line. "If you still love me, you'll understand why I needed an escape." I slammed my laptop shut and called Olivia for the first time since I walked out. When she answered, I cut her off before she could speak. "Stop emailing me, Olivia. We're done. The papers are coming." "Eric, please," she pleaded, panic in her voice. "Just listen to me. Are you serious? You're still trying to blame me?" Silence followed until she quietly said, "I can't believe you're giving up on us." "I didn't give up. You did." After a long pause, I hung up, feeling the weight finally start to lift. I could breathe again.